Welcome to it. Welcome to it. No introduction, nothing fancy. We're getting right down to it. And I gotta tell you, you know what I'm bringing you today? You know what I'm bringing you today? I'm bringing you sass. I'm bringing you sass because that's what I have right now. And sometimes, we just have to go with the sass. So, I do this because some people think that my persona is like 100% always sunshine and roses. And boy, honey, that is just not true. That is one facet. I love that facet because she's so fun. She's so smiley. She's so bright. But sometimes she doesn't have a very good grip of reality. So sometimes the sass queen has to come in and just take over. So frankly, this is also very literally a very plain and simple. I had to put makeup on one time today to go out into the world for some other job, and it's against my religion to put makeup on twice in one day because of my belief that the entire beauty industry is built on the assumption that we are not already beautiful enough. Now, I do wear makeup as a production designer, so I did decide that lipstick was worth it for this podcast episode. So y'all get my lips, you get my sass. That is what you're getting this week. Which is funny because the show I want to talk about, and I have it here on my outline, which I can't really see because these are not prescription sunglasses. I got these sunglasses. I swear to God, they were like 79 cents. I really think they were less than $1 at the Fry's in South Phoenix near my dear friend Angela, near her house. Angelita, thank you again. Gracias so much for your generosity and friendship always. Shout out to my peeps. So I know that I probably seem totally ludicrous, and that's fine. I'm totally fine being completely ludicrous. I'm totally fine being, so here's the thing. I was like, I'm putting on a hat. I'm also hyper fixating on the peak levels because I'm flying without a net. I have no headphones on. So I am watching the red line monitor to make sure I don't peak. So if I do peak, I'm going to pause and apologize because generally these digital peaks and valleys tend to have some digital anomalies in our reality and in our vibration and in our ability to receive the sound vibrations. Because when those sound vibrations get interrupted, it can feel like a major disruption. And I say all of that because, so as you know, if you've been watching me at all, and if you have been watching me and you don't know, then you are not paying attention. But I know a lot of really amazing people who have a lot of really amazing gifts of senses in the invisible world, is how I like to refer to that. And I think most of my life, partly because of my upbringing as a very rationalist in a rationalist society, but also because, a lot of these stories I'm watching and a lot of these programs I'm watching about people who have psychic gifts or people who have the ability to see in the invisible world or people who have the ability to communicate in nonverbal, non-physical ways. The jury is no longer out if you haven't been paying attention. There's been plenty of research to prove that though we cannot usually explain it, we cannot deny it. So I've been watching all these programs where they are usually featuring people who, when they tell their story as, oh, ever since I was 6 years old, ever since I was 8 years old, or ever since I was a child, I had this ability, right? These senses. And, the evil overlord, Western Judeo-Christian structure, and which is perpetuated by both state apparatuses and non-state apparatuses, for those of you who are into that whole, Marxist critique. Anyway, sorry, the PhD at the end just sneaks in now and then and needs to make itself known. If you are one of those people who, wow, geez, now I lost my train of thought. I'm going to go ahead and blame it on I'm not going to blame it. I'm going to pay homage to, if I'm not going to wear makeup, I'm going to don purple. I'm going to pay homage to the royal, magical, majestic prince who really is the king of so many wonderful aspects of music and culture in our modern world. So, purple is the color of the third eye, which is the color of sight in the invisible world, right? And what I have come to learn is that even though I have never had quite as profound or clear a perception in terms of visual phenomena or auditory phenomena, what I did realize today is that my entire life I've been singing. Oh, sorry guys, there. I didn't mean to give you that audio peek again. It happens when I get excited. My whole life I've been singing. I mean, yes, of course, I studied voice and I studied acting and I studied singing with professional voice teachers and I studied opera and I did study. But no one ever had to teach me how to sing. I think I don't know, maybe I was born singing. We'd have to ask my mother. And if we did, here's the thing. There was one time I was traveling with my mother. I think we were on choir tour together on the European tour of the Sonoran Desert Chorale. If there are any Sonoran Desert Chorale peeps in the house, say hello. And I think on that trip, she told me that I sang in my sleep, which, if you know me, probably won't surprise you. So what I am also realizing is that because there's the ability to receive signals and there's the ability to send signals, right? And so people can see in the invisible world and they can send visual information through telepathic means, right? They can hear in the invisible world and they can speak because it's not always the same thing. And then there's also people who can feel. And I have learned that I do have a sense of feeling, which actually is not a surprise to singing. Because what do we do when we sing and when we harmonize? We attune to each other. We sense each other's vibration. And that vibration is something that we can feel in a very tactile sense. And so I would say this is one I don't know that I've actually seen on all the various charts or programs or whatever's study guides that you can get out there for people who will tell you what our intuitive capacities are. And I've seen a few, and some of them are very good. But the ability to attune to the frequencies at hand, which, any musician who has to ever harmonize with other musicians, which is hopefully all musicians, knows what that means, right? When we attune ourselves, we are both listening, we are hearing, we are receiving, and we are also emitting our own signal that is in harmonic frequency with the signals around us. And I think I'm only just now beginning to realize how that in and of itself is its own psychic ability. So I want to shout out to all the singers, all the musicians, all of those, even my dear friend Harmony, those who are attuning their frequency to higher vibrations. This one is for you. I haven't even looked at my outline because I don't have glasses to see it anyway, and that's fine. But I'm just gonna take a peek at it from a distance here. Well, look at me go. Oh, what does that say? I'm getting new glasses, by the way. Mine broke recently. Oh, right. The topic, which I can't see on my screen because I'm not wearing my prescription glasses, but I don't know how many minutes in we are, and it doesn't matter. I'm going to go for as long as I feel guided to go. This series that I watched this week, and it's a 4-part series, although I'm starting to be a little bit like, come on, Gaia, why do you divide things the way you do? These were not the way the directors and editors decided to divide them. It's a 2-part thing that got somehow divided into 4 parts, and not even in the... Anyway, but it's called The Creative Play of Consciousness. So even though I'm full of sass, because there are many things going on in my world that I wish were more aligned and in a more harmonic frequency, we are facing some thickness and some stagnance and resistance and whatever you want to call it collectively, me and my family unit. And so sometimes sass comes through. And I know that when I have been on the other end of watching people from a distance, boy, it's sure helpful to know that sometimes there's, kind of a shitty day, and we get through it. It doesn't mean we love it. It doesn't mean we have to love the shitty days, but we get through it. And we just be present with each other, and we be compassionate with each other. And any chance we can, as soon as it feels right, we forgive each other and ourselves for all of our shortcomings. That's the deal. So, this is all the preamble. Oh, by the way, my normal fake plant over there is actually downstairs in what we were calling Podcast Studio A, which this is technically Podcast Studio B, I think. And then the one 3 floors down in the dining room, library, wine tasting room, I think is Studio C. And then the one in the dressing room is Studio D. So anyway, here we are in Studio B, Rhythm and Flavor Productions. And I'm thinking about this show, this program, and it's all about the playfulness. And it's all about how everything is a learning experience. And it's way more fun to learn when we laugh than when we have to be in pain, right? So why not laugh at stuff? Let's laugh at some stuff, right? Let's see if I can see my outline now. Hell, I can't even see in the visible world, much less the invisible world these days. Oh, right. No, this is the other key thing. And this is where it all comes back to purpose. This is where it all comes back to intent. This is where it all comes back to harmony. This is where they all come together. Because, our mentor, Alberto Villoldo from the Four Winds Society, we're all on his email list, right? And you probably want to get on his email list, even if you haven't studied with him, because he does have a lot of really beautiful insights to share. And the one he had today was a reminder of actually the very first course I took with him. And he talks about how, everybody talks about manifestation, right? And he talks about there was this moment where we all remember when the movie The Secret came out, right? We all saw it. We all thought we knew what the deal was, right? And he went into his office one day and everyone had written out these checks for $1 million to themselves and taped them to the wall because they were manifesting what was going to happen, right? And he observed that. And then on one of his trips to the shamans of the Andes, up into the mountains, this subject came up. And the thing that they shared with him, which I think so many of us forget, is that it's not enough to wish the thing for ourselves. That's not going to get it for us. We need to wish that abundance for our planet, for our families, our communities, our fellow humankind, all creation on planet Earth. That is how the magic happens. That is the secret. And it reminds me of all of these programs that I've been viewing and studying and looking at and considering and pondering. And when we forget that it's not about us individually, it's about us collectively, when we forget that, that's when we end up not only contributing to our own disharmony and disunity, but that actually has a negative effect on our environment around us. And that's one of the phrases that I know I wrote down, is that they say, yes, we are creating our reality, but our reality is also creating us. And it's a vice versa. It's a flow that goes in both directions. And so it reminds me how important it is, even when we think it's not happening in a very big way, even when we can't even see that it's happening. It's so important for us to set that intention to be a positive influence in our own lives and in our immediate surrounding. Especially when the people around you are going through a very tough time. Because it might be that just holding firm to your light and weathering the storm is the best you can do, and that is enough. And that is more than enough. And it might not feel like you're doing anything, but you're holding the light and you're weathering the storm. So, right. So yes, we create our reality and our reality creates us. Because if we're too busy creating a shitty reality, we're going to have a shitty reality creating ourselves. So the more we can plant the seeds of a non-shitty reality, the more we will reap the benefits of a non-shitty reality, just to speak in very plain and simple terms. And, people, part of that is going to have to be listening to people that you don't agree with. That's all I'm going to say about that, because I don't really want to focus on that right now. But it's true. So this whole concept of how we create our reality. So I don't know how many of you have been watching White Lotus. I actually preferred the first season. I thought the first season was the best season because the first season was funny. There was humor. And you know I'm a big fan of humor. And somehow this third season, I didn't really see very much of the humor, if there was any at all. I was for certain, I thought for sure, oh my goodness, what's her face? I was about to say Piper Laurie, but that is a whole different person. Oh my goodness, you all know who I'm talking about. I thought she was going to be more comic relief, honestly, because I love her. Parker Posey, thank you. I love her. I love her. And I really thought she was going to be the funniness that we needed. But it wasn't that funny. The whole thing just wasn't that funny. But there was one moment that really just hit home to me like, oh man, if we are not paying attention to this, what are we paying attention to? So, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, that's probably not going to be a spoiler alert. So there's a character who is so like wrapped around the axle and just paralyzed in life about the fact that he believes that this guy killed his father and ruined his life, right? And so he's there to get vengeance. He's there to go, you know, da 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 da. And there's a moment in the series, in I think the penultimate episode. I love being able to use the word penultimate. I actually learned that in music theory class at Occidental College, which is also a school that Barack Obama went to. So, yo, Barack, you know, we're alumni from the same place. See, you talk about somebody who actually has presence and poise like Barack Obama, and I just totally lost my train of thought. Remember the good old days when we had a president that we could be like, yeah, man, I like listening to you speak. It actually kind of makes me feel good about this project that we're part of. So sorry that that's not the way things are these days. Which I have to pause here for a moment because my subconscious brought it up, and so we're going to talk about it. Someone I know commented that they were in a situation where someone very loudly and very unironically proclaimed that America was greater when we were racist. And so I really had to kind of pause and ask myself, like, what would I do or say if someone said that in my presence? I mean, of course, in hindsight, right, the first thing is like, well, better for whom, right? Like for rich white people? Sure. Maybe even for poor white people, but I'm not really that sure, actually. But I thought, how do we collectively see each other as parts of a whole when there are these moments of disconnect that are so great that they're incomprehensible to me? That someone could be so overtly, loudly, unironically championing racism. So it's there, folks. It's there, and I think we all know it's being exposed now. I think a lot of people are saying that already. People have been saying it for a while. So let's just go ahead and not ignore the elephant in the room, right? Let's not ignore the elephant in the room. I still haven't even talked about the episode. But see, that's the nice thing is, for me, it's not even about what this program was that I saw, love the title. Well, actually, I don't love the title because I can't remember it. So maybe there's a better title. But for right now, the title of the show that is stimulating this conversation is called The Creative Play of Consciousness. Because the thing that keeps getting teased out in all these, whether it's Deepak Chopra or Bruce Lipton or Joe Dispenza or whoever is, your guru of the day. There is this boy, how do we want to describe it? Like, I almost want to call it a clear mandate, but not a mandate in that you have to do this, but a clarity in terms of, if we're not getting on board with this, what are we doing? Oh, and now I have to bring it back to the White Lotus moment. Okay, so there's this guy, and he has spent his whole life hating this person that he's never met, like hating vengeance, like, oh, so much of my life was lost. And like, it's like a 10 episode series. There's like 8 episodes of this guy being all angsty and, wanting to kill this man and seek revenge on his father's death and blah, 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 blah. And there's this scene in the penultimate episode. That's where we were. In the penultimate episode where he confronts the man that he believes killed his father. And just tells him, hey, you ruined my life, da-da-da-da-da, blah-blah-blah-blah, just says his piece, basically. And doesn't kill him and walks away. And for like a day, this guy feels so liberated. Because all he had to do was say his piece. And he was free from that story. He was free from that story. And our stories are sometimes the way we keep ourselves so trapped. Because here's what happened. The next morning at breakfast, the guy that he didn't kill came back and told him off. And then he went right back into that same cycle, that same reality that he knew for years and years and years since his childhood. He ruined my life. He took away my childhood. He took away my life. He ruined my life. He was free 12 hours prior because he said his piece. And then all it took was one trigger, and it sent him right back into bad thinking, unhealthy thinking. And that's the problem. The problem is it really is easy to fall back into unhealthy thinking if it's what we've known, especially if we've known it our whole lives. And especially, doubly, triply, especially, if any of those life experiences involved abuse or trauma at all, and you spent the rest of your life trying to get over it and inadvertently trapping yourself in these behavior patterns. So let's just say that when that moment happened in the White Lotus, I felt that it resonated with me deeply, and I felt like I could see it in my own life and around me too. And so I'm just trusting that that was a moment of recognition that's going to help me get past whatever that was onto a brighter future. So let's see if I can look at my list without my glasses again. Of course, that leads us to the whole point of everything. The whole point of this documentary, this 4-part documentary, which is actually 2, and that's fine, called The Creative Play of Consciousness. The whole point of this experience on planet Earth in this meat suit we're wearing is to play, to explore, to learn what it is to be human. And here's the not so secret thing that no one wants to tell you, but everybody knows, is that life is sometimes painful. You can't get to the end of it without experiencing pain. But the question is, how do you face the pain? How do you process the pain? How do you move through the pain? How do you allow the pain to exist and make space for it and be present with it? Because the truth is, reality is a world of possibilities. This is actually the thing that Deepak Chopra said in this documentary. He said, it is infinite potentiality, that reality is not matter. Reality is not the physical things. That reality is possibility. And when we can encourage that truth to live in us a little more fully, when we can breathe that in a little more fully, then the potentiality can begin to liberate us from the habituated realities that we have been inhabiting. And one of the moments that also struck me was they were talking about how there is a documented history of psychic abilities, from back in the 1800s to now, but especially from the 1960s forward. And they were talking about this woman that I'd never heard of, but she apparently channeled some spiritual leader who was around in the 1600s. I forget what the name was. But he said he was coming back to channel the messages to shake up mankind from our entrenched belief systems that have paralyzed us and crippled our potential development. So I may have added some coloring words there, but essentially, he was here to shake up the entrenched belief system that has existed for so long that has kept us so trapped. So that's where that came in. I'm going to look all the way from here. Oh, and of course, we are here to learn. And yet my son used to make fun of me. He was like, Mom, do we have to make this a teaching moment again? Yeah. Actually, we do. And I really want to learn with play and humor and creativity much more than pain. So if you're on board with that, come join me in my neck of the woods, because that's what we're going to be doing. And of course, creativity is the key to everything. Creativity, and the funny thing is when you have a creative block, the best thing to do is be creative, but not in the thing you're blocked in. So if you're having a creative block in writing, you should go do something else that you enjoy that's creative, like cooking or painting or collecting flowers or whatever. Something that is joyful, something that gives you pleasure just by the sheer activity of it. And also nothing that drains you, because sometimes we think we're enjoying things and then we're exhausted at the end. And so you have to be careful about video game type activities. Did I say that out loud? Sorry. We have a new game in our house. It's a Harry Potter game. And even though she is a TERF, she did contribute to world-making narratives in a really profound way. So I have been enjoying that. And then of course, if we're going to talk about this work and about our human potential, we can't not talk about grief, because we're all going to experience it at some point or another. I'm so sorry to tell you that that's true, and if you've been denying it, sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Grief is part of it. And grief, I think, is how we begin to understand what our relationship is to the invisible world. And for some people, I think it manifests as an ongoing dialogue, an ongoing conversation with their deceased loved one. And I think for other people, it can be a source of creativity, right? Because really, when you have something very profound to share, you have to share it in whatever the creative voice is that comes through, and not be really dogmatic about rules and things and structures. Structures can be liberating if you use them as a tool to free the voice. But you don't want structures to come down on your voice, not when you're in that space of grieving. Because step one is to just create something, to just start somewhere, to just create a message, create a something, create a hello, create a I'm sorry, create a doodle on a notebook. But create something. That's how we start. And for this whole program to be focused on creativity as really the language of consciousness and co-creating our reality. Because it's creativity, we're co-creating. And when we get on board with having it be from a place of love and compassion, then we are already on board to have our own journey once we do pass away from this physical body and this physical flesh, to be one that is blissful and peaceful and promising. Because isn't that what we want? For ourselves, for our loved ones, for humanity. I mean, I guess it all comes down to let's just make the world a better place, right? So I found it to be a stimulating program. You should check it out on Gaia, and you should use my affiliate link, because then they look at me and go, wow, she's so cool. She brought us an audience member. Don't you love that? So sign up. Just do the 7-day trial. Watch it. And if you hate it, cancel it. And if you love it, keep it. See you later. Bye.